The Lord of the Rings himself enters the arena looking for new lands to conquer. In this blow-by-blow system, we'll take a look at the malicious demigod in his various forms to discover his true power levels. In order to understand the evolution of Sauron's powers, we'll cover his story in mostly chronological order, and use a combination of feats, statements, and scalings from the works of Tolkien to create his battle profile. Whew, this guy sure liked his aliases. That brings us to one of his most famous abilities, actually. Sauron was a legendary shapeshifter, and often used his tricks to spy on and confuse his enemies. In his battle against the divine hunting hound Huan, he transformed himself into a gigantic demon wolf, a serpent, an undescribed monster, and a vampire so massive he blotted out the moon as if he were a cloud. Hand in hand with changing shape goes his proficiency for illusion magic. In order to extract information from the human warrior Gorlim, he created an illusory copy of his wife Eiluned so lifelike that Gorlim was completely fooled. He also destroyed the magical disguises created by the mighty elf wizard Finrod. As a matter of fact, the majority of Sauron's evil deeds were tied into the art of manipulation. He possessed a terror aura so overpowering that he used it to drain the entire city of Minas Tirith of resistance and easily captured it. When he was captured by the superhuman Númenórean Empire, in 3 years he went from suspiciously cooperative prisoner to controlling the emperor like a puppet and converting his subjects to Morgoth cultists. The sky god Manwë sent divine lightning to fry the now evil empire and decimated a good part of their city, but Sauron was completely unharmed. For reference, Manwë was one of the Valar, the beings that built the physical universe and governed the laws of nature. Sauron was also an extremely skilled smith, having studied underneath the forge god Aule before his corruption. He created the One Ring, which amplified his own power as well as gave him control over the thoughts of the other ring-bearers, and his influence over the 9 rings of men sucked their owners into the realm of shadows and turned them into wraiths. He also created werewolves by taking evil spirits and imprisoning them inside of animals' bodies, showing an even more terrifying form of soul manipulation. One of his most fearsome abilities is auto-resurrection, something he is automatically granted due to his status as a Maiar, or primeval demigod. When the omnipotent being Ilúvatar destroyed Númenor and Sauron, the cheeky devil simply reconstructed his body with a thought and set up shop again in Middle-earth. Tricky things, immortal villains. Tolkien is clear on the point that Sauron was the strongest of Morgoth's servants and one of the most powerful Maiar period, even writing that Sauron was greater effectively in the Second Age than Morgoth was at the end of the First. We also learn in the book Morgoth's Ring that Sauron could enslave the minds of others and possess them with evil spirits under his control, meaning that he wasn't limited to animals. He also led an army of necromancers at one point. Perhaps the most important statement about his strength is found on page 11 of the Silmarillion, which says that the strongest Maiar were nearly as powerful as the Valar. Those are, as previously mentioned, the divine super-spirits who put the stars in the sky, built the concepts of space and time, and even with their most casual attacks, rearrange continents and mountain ranges. That brings us to scalings. With the power level of the Valar as a ceiling, let's look at some baseline estimations for Sauron's first incarnation. He's stronger than the Balrogs, who destroyed a huge portion of a continent in the War of Wrath. He's stronger than the Maiar Ose, who lifted the 600-mile-wide Númenor from the seafloor. He's stronger than Caladan the Black, the titanic dragon who could fight a Silmaril-empowered Eärendil at faster than light speeds. And he's even more powerful than Carcroth, the demonic wolf who survived the scorching energy of the Silmaril in his belly for weeks. For reference, a Silmaril is a magical jewel that contains the light and power of countless stars. So we're looking at anywhere between solar system level to a peak at galactic strength, maybe a little higher, for scaling above Silmaril tier beings, and being nearly on par with the Valar. Add to that his plethora of abilities and Sauron's terrifying strength becomes clear. We're not saying that Sauron necessarily could create or destroy a galaxy, but he was in the same combat league as people who did. The neat thing about auto-resurrection is that it preserves the vast majority of your power. After Sauron regenerated the first time, his physical strength was undiminished, but he could no longer shapeshift to trick his enemies. This version of Sauron wasn't around very long, just the end of the Second Age, but he was just as strong combat-wise as his first body. He showed control over geological forces when he caused Mount Doom to erupt at will, and his demonic form radiated an infernal heat that destroyed the Elf King Gil-galad. Tolkien wrote that, while he wore the ring, his power on Earth was actually enhanced. This version of Sauron did in fact actively use the One Ring and still maintained control over his ring wraiths and other servants. It's possible that because of this strength enhancement he may have been even more formidable than his first body, or at least on the same level. Sauron remained superior to the vast majority of the other demigods, and even the most powerful elf rulers, who themselves reached divine levels, were afraid of him. Although he was killed in his fight against the High Elf King Gil-galad and the Gondorian King Elendil, he took them down with him and shattered Elendil's sword, which was implied to contain a Silmaril-like power. Sauron's last 2 forms were technically the same body. He cast a shadow over the Hobbit as the Necromancer, although he had yet to recover most of his strength because he was missing the ring. Even then, he survived a fight against the White Council, the members of which were each at least comparable to a Balrog. He regained more of his original power while in Mordor. He maintained the mile-high towers of Barad-dûr together with his life force, and controlled millions of orcs with his sheer willpower. He He also displayed weather control on a countrywide level in Return of the King, and in the Two Towers, he fired a blast of magical energy as a beacon to the Witch King. That casual display of power caused an earthquake that shook all of Mordor. He stalemated Gandalf the White in a telepathic struggle, and drove the Steward of Gondor insane with his mental gaze. Although significantly weaker in this state than with the Ring, Sauron was still regarded as a serious threat by Middle-earth's most powerful beings. Gandalf the White said that Sauron was the only being more dangerous than himself in Middle-earth, meaning that among the Maiar, Sauron still held an extremely high position. His combat capabilities should still be within the epic ranges previously explained. By far the most powerful version of this iconic villain, Sauron's true form makes all others look childlike in comparison. Before his corruption, he was one of the divine angel-like spirits that participated in the Ainulindale, or creation. He, along with the primordial forms of the other Valar and Maiar, existed in a state above time, space, or dimensions. Referred to in the Silmarillion as the Timeless Halls, it's the dwelling place of the all-powerful Eru Ilúvatar. To the beings that dwelt with Eru, all of existence was nothing more than a story that Eru taught them how to write. They followed his designs and built everything, creating the concepts of life and death, chaos and harmony, causality, emotion, all of the aspects of reality you can think of. As an extreme lowball, that put Sauron's cosmic soul form, back when he was still a good guy, at universe level, but it's likely far higher. They existed outside of everything. Cosmology, dimensions, multiversal structures had no meaning to those infinite spirits. Rather than pitting Sauron against foes like Voldemort, maybe the Chaos Gods from Warhammer would be a better match.